Alright, this is gonna be a response video to Red Scare TV, Pharaoh Red, and Red North Scott. So apparently, I heard that part where Pharaoh Red said, "Well, you and Lewis are not capitalists. You don't own a factory with workers." Alright, first of all, I never even considered myself to be a capitalist. I consider myself to be a capitalist supporter, you fucking idiot. Private property rights in Hitler's Germany were not protected and upheld. They were violated and infringed upon the state. If individuals belonged to the population demographic which were deemed inferior by the state, like Jews, Slavs, and Gypsies, they had their rights of property violated as the state confiscated their property. The confiscation of private property is one of the definitive aspects of a socialist system. Plus, in terms of the economy, trade, etc., it was highly regulated and centrally controlled by the state. Again, more socialism. I get that the non-aggression pact between Stalin and Hitler was just like supposedly to avoid a war, but here's the thing, that still doesn't explain the fact that Stalin deported Jews into Nazi Germany from 1939 to 1941, and this isn't propaganda. These are historical facts.
Only 3 countries had previously been labeled as aggressors by the League: militaristic Japan, fascist Italy, and Nazi Germany. Now they were joined by the Soviet Union. In Europe, the Soviet Union had only one ally left: Hitler. Hitler launched his blitzkrieg in the West. Nazis occupied Denmark, Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg. Norway was invaded with the direct help of the Soviet Union. Stalin provided the Nazis with a Soviet naval base near Murmansk, from which Hitler launched his attack on Norway. Stalin wrote to the Nazi Foreign Minister Ribbentrop, "The friendship between Germany and the Soviet Union was sealed by blood." Apparently, he meant the blood of the Soviet and Nazi victims. And friendship it was. The Soviet Union became the main supplier of resources for the Nazi war machine. Thousands of tons of oil, iron ore, construction materials. Even trainloads of Soviet grain were sent to the German army. Soviet citizens were starving, but their government was sending food to Hitler. The Soviet Premier Molotov went to Berlin to discuss the post-war world order. He arrived with a list of territories the USSR was interested in. While Hitler and Molotov were discussing it, the other Soviet comrades enjoyed the company of Goebbels, who must have talked about the advantages of Nazism, because it was the Soviet Premier Molotov and not Goebbels who warned the West not to fight Nazi ideology. More than that, in his address to the Supreme Soviet in the Kremlin, Molotov declared that fighting Nazi ideology was actually a crime. It was published in all the largest Soviet newspapers. Later, that page will disappear from the public libraries of the USSR, along with many other pro-Nazi statements of the Soviet government. Officially, Moscow portrayed itself as an epic anti-fascist fighter. Many people believed it. Many Jews fled to the USSR to be protected from Hitler. And then, Stalin did something unimaginable. He rounded them up and delivered them back to the Gestapo as a gesture of friendship.
Also, privatizations are also not necessarily positive. Industries can be privatized, but they can still be in bed with the government, and they can enjoy a range of government taxpayer-funded subsidies and state-enforced monopolization. So I will be debunking Red North Scott when he also said that's not how prices work. If it was then, why are prices rising for basic commodities when Thatcher opened up the British market to foreign capitalist investment? And why are they still rising when the mass privatization policies are pushed through by Cameron? Prices were actually lower when Britain had nationalization, and oh yeah, the USSR had three massive price drops between 1930 and 1950, and there was no competition between financial groups there. Okay, so you pretty much debunked yourself. You once said that like the UK wasn't like near wasn't near socialism, but now here you're saying that it is on its way to socialism. I do know, and I have seen this replicated many nations and economies around the world, is that it's true that the sale prices for commodities or products under nationalized, state monopolized industries or production can at times be lower due to the fact that production costs are subsidized by the state by taxes from the people or state loans, and the state can also dictate the sale of a product, like the price of it. But that does not mean you are paying in total less for a product if it's produced from a nationalized means of production, not necessarily. An example, the government takes a percentage of your income via taxation, and part of the money is used to subside the cost of products produced by the state. Now you purchase these products up front of a lower sale price, but most people forget, especially lefties, that they have already, you could say, prepaid previously for this product via their taxes and wealth taken from them by the government. Also, if the government creates loans to subside the cost of production, who is financially burdened with this debt? The people. There is no such thing as free stuff. The affordability to purchase products is also more than just upfront sale price of that product. What is also important is to remember is that buying power that the people possess. My parents come from Cuba, like not my parents, but my dad comes from Cuba, just my dad, and like he there was like no way he was able to afford the scale and number of products like they do now, living in a more economically free nation. Another thing is, if you click on the link below the video I'm gonna put down in the description, you guys kind of failed to debunk those quotes from Hitler. Hitler didn't just have that one quote, he had plenty that were pro-socialist.
Shortly. Well, his whole argument is just basically this overly simplistic and metaphysical idea that capitalism is individualist and fascism and socialism are collectivist, therefore they are the same, they're one.
Fail. I didn't say they were the same. I said that they were both collectivist ideologies competing. One is internationalist and the other one is nationalist. International socialism, national socialism. I said there were two different things, but like I know it isn't the same thing, but it's still socialism. But when you guys claim that it's capitalism, it's just really annoying. It tells you guys don't know the definition of capitalism. As I mentioned earlier, like there may have been some privatization in there, but the problem was it was denied for everybody else, and that's not really capitalist. That's denying human rights for everybody. And under like free market, it belongs to everybody regardless of what race or fucking religion you are. He nationalized healthcare, he nationalized education, and he collectivized guns. Alright, so here's the definition of capitalism. An economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the state. So I don't understand, how is fascism and capitalism compatible when under capitalism you're supposed to have less government. I mean, it's supposed to be private owners controlling the economy, but under fascism, it's the state who's controlling the economy. So that doesn't make much sense. And then on to that part where Eric said, why are you a capitalist? Like, what's the point? Why are you so for the exploitation of your fellow man? First of all, I'm not for the exploitation. Capitalism is more pro-worker than Marxism. I mean, you guys bitch about working for $8.25 an hour or working for $3 an hour, but yet expect people to work for free? That sounds like a bigger exploitation, if anything.
So what exactly do people mean when they say that workers are being exploited? Well, let's say that someone's a worker at a shoe factory, and they are paid $1 per pair of shoes they produce. Let's also say that the capitalist is able to sell those shoes for $50 a pair. Let's also say that the cost of tools, raw materials, and so on comes out to $5 per pair of shoes. This means that the worker is producing $45 in profits per pair of shoes, yet they are only being paid $1 in compensation. Some people consider this to be surplus labor, otherwise known as exploitation! The problem with this argument is that it only recognizes the value of capital and labor, and it completely rejects the value of the investment of capital and the dramatic improvement in productivity that that capital brings. It simply asserts that the $45 in value was derived solely from the factory worker and not by any other contributing factor. This assertion is simply wrong. Let's break this down into a simpler example. Let's say that you and I are stranded on an island, and we have no advanced technology whatsoever. So we spend our days fishing with our hands, and because of this we are each only able to catch one fish a day. Well, one day you decide that you're going to take a risk. You decide that you're going to go a day without eating anything at all, and instead you're going to devote your time toward building a net, which will hopefully allow you to catch more fish. So tomorrow comes around, and thanks to your net, you are now able to catch 3 fish a day. Now you only have to go fishing 1 out of every 3 days, and you can spend the other 2 days having fun and doing whatever you want. Well, I look at this position with envy. I want to improve my living standards as well, but I don't want to go through the self-sacrifice of going hungry for a day in order to build my own net. Realizing that this is an opportunity to further increase your living standards and mine at the same time, you offer to lend me your net under the condition that I give you 1 fish a day. Now you no longer have to go fishing at all, and I am able to make 2 fish a day rather than 1. We are both better off. But some people would look at this scenario and cry foul. They would argue that you are exploiting 1 fish per day from me, that I am producing 3 fish a day even though I'm using your net, and that you would be exploiting me if you demanded any of my 3 fish. The problem is a misunderstanding of who owns what. You own your net. I own my labor. My labor by itself is only able to produce 1 fish a day, but my labor combined with your capital is able to produce 3 fish a day. Therefore, my labor is producing 1 fish a day, while your net is producing 2 fish a day. You are not exploiting me because my labor is not what is producing the 2 extra fish. It is your net that is producing the 2 extra fish. But you are willing to let me have 2 fish a day instead of 1 in order to entice me to use your net rather than just continue fishing with my hands. Therefore, you are paying me more than my labor is actually worth, not less. And thanks to the capital that you were willing to lend to me, I am now able to produce my own net without having to go hungry for a day like you did. Let's go back to the shoe factory. Although the exploitation proponent recognizes the nominal value of capital insofar as what you have to pay for a building, electricity, plumbing, raw materials, tools, and so on, they refuse to recognize the real value of that capital insofar as its effect of dramatically multiplying the productivity of the worker's labor. For example, let's say that the worker is able to produce 10 pairs of shoes per hour. What if the capitalist did not offer the worker any capital whatsoever with which to produce the shoes? How many pairs of shoes would the worker be able to produce with just their bare hands? Obviously, fewer than 10 pairs an hour. Yet the exploitation proponent does not take this into consideration, and they choose to maintain that once the nominal cost of capital is deducted, the rest of the value produced is derived solely from the worker's labor. This is false. Another aspect that is completely ignored is the investment from the capitalist. The capitalist is putting a huge sum of money on the line to pay for immediate costs in the hope that future consumers will want to buy the product that is being created. They are taking the very real risk that consumers will not want to buy their product, in which case they would lose all of the money they invested in this business. This could very well be their entire life savings that they spent decades building up. The capitalist is the one taking the risk of losing their investment if the business fails. Therefore, that they deserve the reward of making a profit if the business succeeds. The worker, on the other hand, rather than agreeing to work for a percentage of the potential future profits, has decided to instead work for an immediate, set, guaranteed wage that is not dependent upon whether the product will sell in the future or not. This fact alone should discount the argument that the worker should have a claim to a percentage of the profits. No, the worker has decided to be compensated a wage rather than a percentage. They get to keep their wages even if the product fails. The wage worker has no more right to a percentage of the profits than the businesses selling the electricity, plumbing, tools, raw materials, and so on. If a worker does not like this arrangement, they are free to unite with other workers and take out a loan or spend decades of their lives accruing capital just like the capitalists did, so that they can start up their own business where all of the workers will be paid no wages whatsoever, but rather an equal share of the potential profits. Perhaps this worker self-managed model would be the most widespread in a free market, or perhaps workers would not prefer the risk of a potential profit share that may never come, and instead prefer the guaranteed immediate wage. But in either case, there is no exploitation. To put it simply, it is practically impossible for the capitalist to pay lower than the value that a worker's labor is producing, because the capitalist has to pay higher than the value that the worker's labor was producing before they started working for the capitalist. Otherwise, the worker would simply decline the job offer and continue doing whatever they were doing previously. But let's just say that the increase in the worker's productivity is derived solely from the worker's labor itself, and has nothing to do with the capital that is being mixed with it. Let's also say that they have a right to 100% of the profits. Okay, let's say that a capitalist is renting a boat for 10 fish per hour, and he pays you 10 fish per hour to go fishing with the boat, and produce 50 fish per hour. Thus, the evil greedy capitalist is exploiting 30 fish per hour from you, since your labor is producing 40 fish per hour and he's only giving you 10. What happens when you are taken away from the boat and dropped on an island, all by yourself with no evil greedy capitalist in sight, and surprisingly, you are no longer able to produce 40 fish per hour? Who are you going to blame for exploiting your labor then?
That also debunks the ridiculous claim that Red North Scott made that all of us had to sell our labor, while the minority has all the control. Plus, what's it called again? National Socialism is opposed to capitalism, and it's also opposed to international socialism and stuff, and like communism, Marxism, Leninism, but not against socialism. Oh, and by the way, Red North Sky, I never said that that Leninism and all that stuff was different. I said that they all have different perspectives, and I also said that they're all like basically different branches of socialism. You know, Nazism, fascism, corporatism, communism, Marxism, and so on. All those are branches of socialism. I never said they were different, but they just had different perspective. And another part of that video is when Feral Red said, according to his logic, Tasmanian tigers will be tigers. Here's the thing, the Tasmanian tiger isn't even the actual name of the animal. Like, it was some different kind of animal that existed a long time ago. It's called the thylacine. The thylacine is like a kangaroo, a possum, or something like that. I don't know much about it. But here's the thing. The Tasmanian tigers doesn't have the feature of a tiger. National Socialism is an actual thing. and it also has features and has done policies that are socialist. And that is it for today. Remember, smash the left.